I'm Dr. Brent Blue, Teton County, Wyoming coroner. After a detailed investigation by our forensic pathologist, our anthropologist, and local law enforcement, with assistance from the FBI, the Teton County Coroner's Office is following the following verdict. In the manner of death of Gabrielle Lenora Petito, we find the cause and manner to be death by strangulation, and manner is homicide. By Wyoming state statute, only the cause and manner of death are released. Their autopsy findings and photographs and that sort of material is not released by state statute.
Breaking news out of Teton County, Wyoming, as the coroner there, Dr. Brent Blue, announces the cause of death for Gabby Petito, something we've been waiting to hear for a few weeks now. He says she was strangled to death. This is big news coming out. We knew that the autopsy had already determined that Gabby Petito's death was a homicide. Dr. Blue saying he is only tasked with determining the cause of death, not whether or not somebody will be charged or who will be charged in this case. So good afternoon. I'm Anjanette Levy. Thanks for joining us here on the afternoon session. I want to bring our guests in to talk about this breaking news that we've been waiting for. Bob Hilla is a defense attorney, a trial attorney, and Krista Ramey, also an attorney. Thanks to both of you for joining us today. Krista, I'll start with you. The coroner at one point during his press conference specifically referenced domestic violence cases. So he says it's not his job to determine who will be charged in this case or when, but obviously he sees this as a domestic violence homicide. And strangulation, in the cases I've covered over the years, that's not unusual to see in domestic violence cases.
It's a very, very personal crime, strangulation is, and that's true. That would lean towards someone that is actually committing the crime, not a stranger, because it doesn't happen instantaneously. This takes some time, and it takes a lot of emotion and feeling behind it. It's just so incredibly tragic. I think that we were all expecting that there was going to be something, out pretty soon on this case, and this is just some sad news. Today, start off our Tuesday.
Yeah, sad news. Any way you cut it, no matter what the cause of death would have been. I mean, obviously they're saying this is not an accident. So Bob, what do you expect next? Obviously, the FBI is in charge of this investigation. We can gather that, she may have been killed there in the Bridger Teton National Forest, which is on federal land. So do you expect a federal murder charge out of this? It's not something we see often, but the charge does exist.
Well, yes, it does. And obviously that's something that's going to have to be worked out between, the federal government laws in terms of where there is overlapping jurisdiction with the state, where they cede jurisdiction to the state and the state in this case. What's interesting is, now the focus is going to be, on this continuing manhunt for Laundrie. Mm-hmm. And, as mentioned before, it's kind of interesting the fact that they say domestic violence because it suggests, while they haven't charged him with any crime beyond, the use of property, it suggests that they're tying him to this death. And again, they have to be careful what they release. So they said the cause of death was strangulation, the manner was homicide. They're going to be limited in what they want to release because if they do catch Mr. Laundrie, they're going to want to have some questioning of him, or at least see what his response is with respect to some things they may throw at him. So they're not going to want to give him too much of a heads up in terms of what the investigation showed so far.
Sure. And he, the coroner, kept saying in response to all of the questions from the reporters and the news people out there that, he was really only required to release the cause of death under the state statute there in Wyoming. Krista, Bob mentioned the manhunt. This turns the focus now. Obviously, the focus has been on the manhunt, but what happens now? You have to think that when the FBI knew the day of the autopsy that this was a homicide, and I'm assuming they may have had an indication that she was strangled. The coroner said that did take some further investigation, I'm assuming because of the decomposition of the body. Does the manhunt for him intensify, or is it, kind of like just business as usual, the way things have been going for the last couple of weeks, just kind of maybe waiting for this guy to pop up and surface?
Well, I think it has been intense behind the scenes. I think there's a lot that we don't know. They must have suspected that it was strangulation. However, you are correct. I mean, she was out literally in the forest for weeks before her body was found. And so I would imagine that that did take a little bit of time to nail down. But yeah, sure. I mean, I think it's going to intensify in terms of the manhunt, but I think that this has already been a pretty intense manhunt. I think that by the time her body was found, everyone pretty much knew that he was going to be the primary focus for her death, and now I think that's only solidified that fact based upon the manner of death.
Yeah, definitely. And Bob, what happens, if you're Brian Laundrie's attorney? He's got this family attorney. He's released statements via text. We're still waiting to get something from him. I've reached out today and actually just got something from him. It just popped up on my laptop right now. I want to read this to both of you, Bob, and then get your reaction. Gabby Petito's death at such a young age is a tragedy, while Brian Laundrie is currently charged with the unauthorized use of a debit card belonging to Gabby. Brian is only considered a person of interest in relation to Gabby Petito's demise. At this time, Brian is still missing, and when he is located, we will address the fraud charge pending against him. Bob, your thoughts on that statement from the Laundrie family attorney, Steve Bertolino? It just came in on my laptop.
Well, what's interesting is, and there may be some conflicting interests here too, because remember, there could be some viewing about obstruction and other issues with respect to the parents, but it suggests that he's sort of still representing the whole gang there. And that perhaps he's going to be addressing the charges against Mr. Laundrie if and when he's apprehended. But so he really has to play it carefully, and what he's doing is he's saying, yes, this is a tragedy. We acknowledge that, and then also say, well, look, he's not charged with a murder yet. He's charged with some other crimes, and we'll address those crimes, once he's brought into the picture. So I think, that's what his statement is. And of course, there's a lot of things we don't know there with the investigation that the law enforcement has, but they're not going to disclose. And the other thing is they have to continue to look at all other possibilities of who might have committed this crime. So they need to do that work as well, and not look like they're just jumping to a conclusion here if and when somebody's brought to trial.
Krista, we heard last week the Northport Police Department, which was initially in charge of this missing persons investigation. The FBI is now in charge of what's now a homicide investigation. They said within the law, they were keeping an eye on Brian Laundrie at the time that, after Gabby Petito was reported missing, but he slipped away somehow. He got away. So, I mean, where do we go from here? I mean, the fleeing is certainly, it's a, consciousness of guilt type thing. So where do we go from here? And where do you think he is? I mean, do you think he's out in the wilderness, or do you think he's in a house somewhere, being helped by somebody?
I think there's a lot of help that's going on. I think that the parents helped initially the family in him getting away to, the very beginning. So there's that. And I think that the family is under investigation for that assistance that they provided as well. And I think that has been, very clear. So with the help of someone, he got away. Initially when he disappeared, I thought maybe he would turn up dead himself by homicide or suicide rather.
Or suicide, yeah.
Yeah, I really did. I thought, God, this is so tragic. It was probably an accident. And now he, feels tremendous guilt and love for this girl, because you look at their pictures and they just seemed like so happy and young and in love. And now I think that what we now know is that she was once the police footage came out, we know that she was probably a victim of domestic violence for probably some time. It probably didn't just pop up. Classic domestic violence, blaming herself for her abuser's actions. And, well, I was mean to him. I hit him first. I did this. It was my fault. I'm too OCD. I'm too, wanting perfection. And so, I now know, I think what we now know is, or believe, is that he, got away because of the help of family, and probably has family and friends still helping him hide, is my thoughts.
Interesting. It would be interesting to know that. And you would think, too, Bob, you would think, and what I think is that the feds probably have all of these people, all of their phones tapped. I'm assuming they could do that with this type of case, wouldn't you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, the one thing that's great about having the federal government involved in an investigation is that you have national resources. So, not only do you have monetary resources, you have technological resources, and you have personnel that can be doing a full court press trying to find a person that you don't necessarily have when you have just one state looking at it, like, you might have Wyoming here, for instance.
Hmm. Well, we have a lot to talk about today, a lot to talk about with this case and other cases. So stay with us here while we take a quick break. You are watching the afternoon session here on Law and Crime.